Welcome teachers and amantes de English language teaching. Thank you for inviting me to speak here today. I'm Wendy Colson, an international English language teaching consultant specializing in teaching young learners and very young learners, and also working in low resource environments and community-based programs. Our topic today here in Rosa Mexicano is Back to the Future, traditional activities in teaching English to young learners today. Let's get started. So the main thesis for today's presentation is traditions are a pathway to 21st century skills for young learners. By traditions, I mean traditional children's activities such as songs, rhymes, rhythms, games, and stories. Certainly, they aren't the only pathway, but it is my hope to convince you that they are a natural, effective, and developmentally appropriate way, and a joyful way, to arrive at these skills for this age group. For this presentation, I will define young learners as those in kindergarten through third grade. Now, it can seem a bit antiquated talking about 21st century skills 20 years down the road, but if you weren't on the bandwagon before, COVID-19 has certainly made you pay more attention to them and has catapulted you, at least technologically speaking, into the 21st century. So in order to teach right now and in the new normal, we have to use technology for our teaching and teach it to young learners so that they have access to education. However, what I want to emphasize today during this time of technological frenzy is that we need to ground our understanding of the developmental and pedagogical pathways to 21st century skills and global citizenship that are appropriate for our young learners and not get too caught up on the technology. Okay, so of course technology can be a part of it, but the path to these skills looks much differently for this age group in my experience. However, I would love to read your thoughts and opinions on this in the chat. I will keep my eye on it. So during this presentation, we'll first visit first language development through to children's traditional activities. Then we'll move over on their influence on English language learning before we look at how they are a developmentally and pedagogically sound way into 21st century skills, especially global citizenship. Are you with me? Okay, so teachers, it's time for a think and chat. This is the new turn and talk in the new normal in this format, okay? So please think about your response to these two statements. Number one, think about the traditional songs, rhymes, games, and stories that you loved as a child that involve language. Maybe it's a song your grandmother used to sing to you to get you to go to sleep. Maybe you are with your cousins playing a game of tag outside in the summer. Or are you at school and your teacher is reading or telling you a story? Where are you? Who are you with? Are you singing, playing, listening? Okay, now, I know there was a spark of joy in your eye. So please type in the chat the name of one of those activities that sparked a vivid childhood memory. Write it in the chat. I'm keeping my eye on it. So while you are typing, I'll share a memory of mine. Now, I must admit I was a little older than this age group that I'm concentrating today for this presentation. It was I'll take you back to story time in Mr. Heath's 5th grade classroom. So I think I was about 10 years old, and every day after lunch and recess, we'd file into the room. The teacher would keep the lights off. We'd lay our sweaty heads on the fresh, cold desks, and Mr. Heath would sit in front of the room and read a chapter from a chapter book. I still remember a couple of those stories today and have read them to my fifth graders. Now, why is this important to language for me, do I think? Well, I think I'm a pretty good writer, and I think by listening to stories that I had an ability to hear the words from wonderful literature, and that helped me a lot. And I had a warm feeling about stories because of this time in my class. So, what did you write? All right, so while I was preparing for this, I got out this book, Cancionero Infantil Mexicano, and I asked my husband Jorge a similar question to the one I asked you. I said, what songs and rhymes did you remember from childhood? He said a few, but when I pulled out this book, and arroz con leche, ooh, I couldn't stop him. I started reading the titles and stopped. He said, another one, and sang his way through this entire book. So what's one of your favorites? So I also asked a couple friends and former colleagues in the field of English language teaching or education to remember and reflect. So this is a dear friend of mine, Magali Coelho, and she's the founder and director of Colegio Cargolet in Celaya. In her youth, she was out of Mexico for about 10 years. And when she returned with her Spanish husband, she remembers a trip she took to Sinaloa and heard a song in the distance from Cree Cree. And she said that she pulled his arm and made him run over there and listen to it, and sat down and started to cry. And she tried to explain her husband afterwards the significance of this song for her childhood. Now, she couldn't remember which song it was. So when I asked her as an educator to reflect on what this meant for language learning, she said this: children's first language is music. That's how you communicate with a child. Sounds become a part of children and any language. They give them roots. And here are some of the lyrics of the song she first remembered from kindergarten, at La Fiesta de las Vocales. And I'm sure you all know it and can sing this part of the lyric. Funnily enough, my husband, Jorge, was in the room and they both started singing it. Carla Telles is a former colleague of mine here in San Miguel. Now, since she is a kindergarten teacher, I thought she would be a good source of inspiration and have much to say about the topic. Now, when I asked her about the influence of traditional activities, especially songs on childhood, here's what she had to say. Songs can unite us on an emotional level. They make us feel happy or melancholic, which are universal emotions. Young children pay more attention to the emotional essence of songs. She was especially nostalgic about this simple song, El Zapatero, that I had never heard of. She said, even though this song is sad, I really loved it because my mother sang it to me with such tenderness, con mucho cariño. Well, let's move into English language development through traditional songs, rhymes, games, and stories. So I'm especially excited to show you this video. You can see the caption there, the title. So let me tell you, I've been in the field of TEYL for about 27 years now and have been working with young learners and their teachers for the past 16 when I moved to Mexico. Now, and I firmly believe in what I'm speaking about today, but I don't want you to just take my word for it. So I tracked down a student of mine from the 3rd grade from 2008. So let's see what she remembers and how this advances my argument. So this is Jimena. Now, my video editing skills have not kept up with my presentation skills, so excuse me. I will fumble just a little bit, but it'll be worth it. Okay, here we go. Hi, Jimena.
Hi, teacher.
Thanks for agreeing to this. You're in front of a lot of teachers now.
It's a pleasure.
How old are you now?
I'm 19. I'm going to be 20 in November.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You remember our 3rd grade class? Well, you were in my 2nd and 3rd grade English class, right?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, I was.
So I wanted to remember for my presentation to see what songs that you remember that you really liked from back then. And you mentioned one in WhatsApp. I wonder if we could sing it together. Do you remember?
Okay. I think if you start, I can follow you, but I don't know.
Wait, which one did you remember? Which one did you say in WhatsApp?
The one about the pumpkins in the fence.
And the fence. So do you remember any of it? How did it go?
Like five little pumpkins
sitting on a
fence.
Gate. It's actually gate. Gate.
Oh, gate.
The first one said, "Oh my, getting late."
Yeah, it's getting late.
The second one said, "There are witches
in the air." Yeah.
The third one said, "But I don't
care." Yeah.
The fourth one said, "Let's
run and run."
The fifth one said, "Let's have some
fun."
In and out with the lights and the 5 little pumpkins rolled out of sight. That's pretty good, though. That's a long time. Yeah. How did you remember that song?
Because I love it, and I'm always trying to remember the song when this time of the year comes, and I'm like, what was the lyrics? What we was singing? And I love the song just like that.
Now there's another one that I remember when I'm going to stop it there. And because I'll leave the last bit of the interview to conclude the presentation. Do you want to learn the song? It goes like this. 5 little pumpkins sitting on a gate. The first one said, "Oh my, it's getting late." The second one said, "There are witches in the air." The third one said, "But I don't care." The fourth one said, "Let's run and run and run." The fifth one said, "Let's have some fun." Ooh, in the wind and out went the lights, and the 5 little pumpkins rolled out of sight. Now I want to take you fully back into a child's world to discover where they are at. So, nostalgia about our past will only get us so far. So let's look at my description here. Children see themselves as part of the whole, not separate. They don't analyze things. They're at one. So they're also in the moment. They have vivid imaginations. As we know, you're shaking your heads. Yes, yes. They learn through play and imitation. They are dependent, although they get increasingly independent with our help. And they respond physically and emotionally to things, as you can just see from our testimonies. So Did you find this description of a child's world complete? What would you change? What would you add? What would you delete? So let us use this simple description for now. So I'm going to ask you, if this is where children are at, if this is a children's world, how they see and experience the world, where do 21st century skills come in? So here is what I will argue for this last section. So why traditional cultural activities for young learners? Why? Summarizing Shin and Crandall from their book, Teaching Young Learners English, learning about other cultures through song and movement is an age-appropriate way for developing global citizenship, an important 21st century skill. So let's first take a look at what we mean by 21st century skills now. Okay, so this is one framework for 21st century skills. There are many, but I chose this one because I have found that it is the most cited around the world. Wherever I travel, everybody knows the 4 C's, and it's very simple as an introduction. So here are the famous 4 C's: communication, sharing thoughts, questions, ideas, and solutions, which of course is included in the English language skills to be able to communicate globally. Collaboration, working together to reach a goal. Critical thinking, looking at problems in a new way. And creativity, innovation, and invention. I also want to take a look at global competencies because for me, they're also a wider look at cross-cultural competencies. So you will readily see how this matches the 4 C's of 21st century skills, but with a bit of a wider perspective. So we have here in the blue section, it says investigate the world. And in the tiny print, it says students investigate the world beyond their immediate environment. So investigation. The brown section is recognize perspectives. Students recognize their own and others' perspectives. Let's go to the green. Communicate ideas. Students communicate their ideas effectively with diverse students. Finally, the 4th section in purple says take action. Students translate their ideas into appropriate action and improve conditions. So let's look at a few more ideas. So basically, these are the 4 ideas of the global competencies: being creative problem solvers, communicating to others, and collaborating. Listening plays a big part in that. The last 2 really resonate with me as I work with teachers of young learners around the world. Let's look now at how traditional activities for young learners set the groundwork for the 4 C's and a little bit more. We'll take a look at the activities one by one and match them to the framework. Since communication is the skill central to all these activities and to our English classes, we'll talk about that a bit separately. Okay, so songs and rhymes promote communication and collaboration. Let's look at a quote from the literature to support this. Children exposed to music have a greater motivation to communicate with the world, perhaps because music provides their first exposure to the existence and richness of their own culture, as well as the heritage and cultures of other people and regions. And communicating is connection, right? Another C we could add. Remember what Magali said about music being the language of the child, and that Carla said that it unites children through a common language of emotions. Well, that generates empathy and translates to other cultures, as we see here. In fact, Gardner says that music is the first intelligence to develop in children. So this is their language across the world. So I have my own short anecdote, again, not at this age, a little bit later. I was in California speaking at a district Rotary conference a few years ago. And one evening we were invited to dinner by the hosting club president. And my husband and I were seated with many members of a sister club from Korea who didn't speak much English at all. They were very elegant and formal, and it was a little bit hard to get a conversation going. However, to break the very thick ice, I remembered a Korean children's song that my best friend from high school taught me about a butterfly. It goes like this. Nabiya, nabiya, idi nola o nola, hora norang nabi hin nabi, chumyu chumya o nola. They were overjoyed and broke out in song twice, so much so that the other tables around us wondered what we were drinking and eating. They gave me presents, and soon the atmosphere was festive, all through a shared song. So here's an example where our cultures cross. This is the English version of El Marinero. So it goes like this. It's a clapping song. A sailor went to sea, to see what he could see, but all that he could see was the bottom of the deep blue sea. So since you also have this in Spanish, it is quite familiar to them, and the clapping part requires collaboration. So here are a few more songs that children have loved and remembered over the years that I have in my mind. When I was talking to Magali, she reported that her child remembers a song that she learned from her first grade teacher, that I taught that teacher in a training, even now as she's entering the 5th grade. The first song here, Sing a Rainbow. Here's some other favorite songs from my students. There's a hole in my bucket if you want to take a screenshot. 5 green and speckled frogs. We're going to the zoo, and of course, any holiday song. So let's move to circle games. So circle games are also songs, but with a game element typical for young learners. So as the name suggests, they are played and sung in a circle, normally with everyone joining hands and doing something. So this requires a lot of collaboration in order for the game to work properly, and communication, verbal and nonverbal. Shin says, singing together helps children bond and feel part of a group. So this creates a positive classroom atmosphere and is inclusive of all. Examples in Spanish are, you guessed it, La Rueda de San Miguel, Doña Blanca, and La Víbora de la Mar. I'm sure you know other ones. Let's take a look at one in English. London Bridge is falling down, falling down, falling down. London Bridge is falling down, my fair lady. Now, so 2 children make a bridge with their hand, and the other students file around. And after my fair lady, they take their hands down and they trap one student between their arms and swing as they sing. Take the key and lock her up, lock her up, lock her up. Take the key and lock her up, my fair lady. maybe doesn't sound so nice to you, but it's really fun when you're young. And there's several other verses. This is a typical one in English. So here are some more circle games from the English language tradition. Which ones do you know? We have bingo. We have oats, peas, beans, and barley grow. Take a screenshot. These are great games and see how to play them. The Farmer in the Dell. I'm sure you know that one. The Muffin Man. And Ring Around the Rosies for the little ones. So I will talk a little bit more about communication and circle games later on, but suffice it to say there's little bits of dialogue in here and that you can build in that can be the first dialogue or forms of discourse that the students take part in. Okay, we have already talked about circle games, which are great for collaboration. And I want to take a little more time here to focus on communication through games. There's also a lot of collaboration. Games also promote, well, in addition to communication, they can be the first chunks of dialogue, in addition to circle games, that the children learn. So I know that these games are popular in English and also in Spanish. I know you have El Lobo, right? Lobo, Lobo, estás ahí, and probably many more. Okay, so they also are great for promoting collaboration. We need this at a global level right now instead of competition, who wins and who loses. So some popular games, and I'll explain them briefly, are Red Rover. So students are at two ends of a playing field or the room. They join hands and they call someone's name. For example, Red Rover, send Michael right over. And Michael runs through and tries to break through the arms. Okay? And if he doesn't, he has to be sent back. Okay? So we have sailor, sailor, may we pass? Again, students line up at one side of the room. There's a sailor in the middle. Usually I like to start as a teacher, and they say this in unison. Sailor, sailor, may we pass? And the sailor says yes or no. If the sailor says yes, they say how? And I might say by skipping, and everybody has to skip, and I try to catch one of them by skipping and tapping them on the shoulder. And we go on and on until there's only one person left to catch in a friendly way. So we are cooperating, not competing. And there's lots of language here. This is one children love and love and love and won't let you stop playing, even when they get older, believe me. Again, all students start along a wall or on one edge of the field, and they say this in unison. Please, Mr. Crocodile or Mrs. Crocodile, may I cross the water to visit your fair daughter? And the crocodile says, yes. If you are wearing yellow, and they look, I'm wearing yellow, and take a step. Or you can build in any language structure. Yes, if you have brothers and sisters. Yes, if tomorrow's your birthday. Any language structure you can add in. And when they get closer to you, you try to catch them, but they can run back and be saved to the other side. And Mother May I is very similar. So all students are along a wall or end of a field, and one of them says, or two of them together, Mother, may I take 3 baby steps, 1 giant step? And you say, yes, you may. And then they do it. So they also try to get to where you are. So these are games that promote collaboration and lots of language, of course. Now let's look at stories, which also promote foundation level 21st century skills. We haven't looked at them closely yet in this presentation, but let's look at them now. So among many things, of course, they promote communication, but they also promote creativity and critical thinking. Stories can help children feel positive about other countries and cultures and can broaden their knowledge of the world. So Lynn Cameron also says in her book, Teaching Languages to Young Learners, that stories originate outside our classroom and bring the world in. How's that for global competency? After this presentation, I think we should add another C of connection, which is contemplated in the global competency framework, which is recognize perspectives. So what are some traditional stories? Well, they can be fairy tales, fables, legends, tall tales, picture books, and chapter books. And as we know, telling and reading stories spark that gloriously imaginative world the children are in. And what is imagination but creativity, which sparks creative problem solving, which is the backbone of critical thinking. Now, if we tell stories from different cultures, this can promote empathy by imagining the culture and other ways of being through the eyes of that culture's people. Now, listening to stories is a whole language experience, which we scaffold comprehension for our young learners. But it's also a great practice in listening for gist because they can't possibly understand every word and we wouldn't expect that. So getting the children comfortable with the ambiguity is a necessary global competence skill. You know that if you've ever traveled anywhere outside your own country, that is. So in addition to, let me go back to that slide, to fables like The Lion and the Mouse and a fairy tale, The Gingerbread Man, here's some other classic stories, usually told to children in English. Which ones have been told to you in your first language? We have Jack and the Beanstalk, Henny Penny, the sky is falling, the sky is falling, The Three Little Pigs, classic Cinderella, but the original version, or the original told version that was written down by Grimm, The Golden Goose, very funny, and The Tortoise and the Hare is a classic. So now you know you are doing much more than teaching English. Let's have a brief look of how we can integrate these activities into our curriculum. As Lynn Cameron notes, whole language texts can be unruly. They often don't fit neatly into our lessons. So we as teachers need to look at the language opportunities they afford, the vocabulary, the grammar that are in them, and let the text lead us, not the other way around, if possible. So one way I did this when I was teaching young learners here in Mexico is to fit them into my instructional routine. So I started the day with circle time, integrating songs, rhymes, and games. And then I told a story, which we often acted out after a few tellings before we looked at the language inside one of the songs or the stories for our day's lesson. These rich texts from stories and songs became our writing exercises and then reading lessons as we remembered the songs and wrote them down, and then practiced them in repeated readings in a variety of ways. Most English for young learner classrooms use traditional children's songs as part of the curriculum. These are authentic pieces of culture that are used to teach English-speaking children their first language and have been passed down from generation to generation. So there are new songs and new games that become part of our culture, like Baby Shark, for example. And I don't think your grandparents grew up with Cree Cree. So we can add new things and start new traditions. Now, many teachers ask me, but which songs, which rhymes, games, and stories? And I always answer, the ones you love and the ones you feel excited about bringing to your students, traditional or not. So I would like to share, having said that, I would like to show you the rest of the video interview with Jimena, trying to see that if she remembered a song that I learned in the 3rd grade. And I remember that her class loved. It's a Halloween song, so it's very appropriate for this time of year. So here we go. Again, bear with me as I fast forward. Here we go.
Now there's another one that I remember when I was in 3rd grade, and I thought you would remember this one because I remember your class just loved it. And when you were in 4th grade, I don't know, no, you left in 4th grade, I think. But it goes like this. See if you remember this one. It's a Halloween song. Tonight is the night when dead leaves fly like witches the sky.
Yeah, I remember like the song, but I don't really remember how it goes. Like it sounds like a little pale here, but I can't remember the song.
If you remember the end, when elf and sprite flit through the night on a moony sheen, on a moony sheen.
Yes, I remember that, but I can't remember all the sound of it.
Yeah, I have the book right here. The song, I had this one in my 3rd grade class that I've kept all this time, and now it's.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so I'll send it to you. Thanks
That
so
would be
much
great.
for remembering this with me, Jimena. I can't believe you remember, and I'm so happy.
I'm happy to. I'm happy to. I'm kind of. Okay, so it was nice. Thank you for having me, and I don't know.
Thank you, and all these teachers, thank you.
Okay, so let's learn it and bring it to another generation, remembering we're bringing them 21st century skills. Tonight is the night when dead leaves fly like witches on switches across the sky, when elf and sprite flit through the night on a moony sheen, on a moony sheen. Did you like that one? There's 2 other verses. So in conclusion, I want to say and reiterate, there are many paths to 21st century skills, but I hope that I demonstrated today that traditional activities such as songs, rhymes, games, and stories are a pretty good way to get there. Here are my references, the sources for this talk, including my 3rd grade book from 1971. Okay, you might want to take a screenshot. I highly recommend the books from 2001 by Lynn Cameron and by Shannon Crandall 2014. Thank you so much for your time. So I hope you can bring the enthusiasm you had at the beginning of this presentation for traditional songs, games, stories into your classroom, knowing that you are promoting 21st century skills and global competencies, which is deeper than just adding a layer of technology. So thank you. I look forward to your questions. Bye, teachers.